Welcome to another episode of Four Guys Talking About AI. Today we got three guys. Our buddy John Gerard is not available, but we've got Greg Sterling and Neil Polachek here with me. Hey guys, how are you?
How goes it, Edie?
Goes well. Really exciting week this week. We're going to run through several things that we're going to talk about today. Lionsgate, big film company, just put a deal together with RunwayML to create some really interesting outcomes that are completely changing Hollywood. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Elon did a crazy thing this week with pushing out a deepfake video about Kamala Harris. This all unpacks what is free speech and what's allowed. We'll talk a little bit about that. OpenAI's funding is oversubscribed. Wow, billion-dollar round oversubscribed. Consumer products, people are talking about AI beds, AI toasters, AI, all these devices. We'll talk about that as well. So let's jump into the top here and talk about Lionsgate and RunwayML. This deal has the ability to change Hollywood in such a dramatic way. Greg, you want to lead off on that one?
It's been a couple of days since I read this, so I may get some of the particulars a little bit wrong. But basically, Lionsgate, which is a significant studio. I don't think they're owned by any of the major studios, but they're a pretty significant independent studio, I believe, behind the Twilight, Twilight and others.
All these franchises.
Yes. Okay, so they are going to give their entire catalog, as I understand it, to Runway. And Runway is going to develop some specialized tools for them that they can use in filmmaking, that they will be using for effects. And they're going to use tools internally to storyboard, as I understand it. So they're going to be using some tools in the filmmaking process. And then they will be using some stuff in post-production, presumably as well. And Runway is going to get all this high quality. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of films this represents, but they're going to get all this high quality video, which will enable them presumably to generate, do text to video generation that will be of at a different order level of quality and capability, and length, right? Length has been one of the things that I think is an issue. You get these sort of short videos, and now they're going to get longer and longer. Just a short time ago, we had the actor and writer strike in Hollywood. And one of the issues that they were disputing with the studios was the use of AI. And I believe that the writers, and maybe the actors too, secured some kinds of concessions from the studios against using AI to replace them. But they were fearful of a situation just like this, where more and more of the film itself would be created with AI, that acting parts might be use AI. So, for example, in the Star Wars films, they're using images of dead people, Carrie Fisher, and now James Earl Jones, although he doesn't appear facially, and others. So there's a lot of concerns that the humans have about AI replacing them. And this sort of seems to validate some of that, although it's very exciting from a technology standpoint.
I think they own some 20,000 films and television titles, which is a tremendous amount of data that these machines can then, extract from. It's a big
more
deal.
Than enough to fully train them. It's more than enough to fully train them.
Right.
Yep. I mean, previously, all these things were being trained on YouTube, which is a lot of stuff, but it's not of the same quality.
Absolutely. And the storytelling part of this is a game changer. This is where a lot of this technology is going. There's a company called LTX Studio. It's an Israeli company that created this whole storyboarding software so that you can prompt it with a few ideas, and in real time, it started to lay out the storyline, and then even creating index images for each scene. And then it can go into each scene and even type in what's going on in that scene, camera angles, and it starts to generate it all in real time so that you can start to put together the story. Within an hour, you can really have a pretty in-depth video that helps to tell your story.
Do you guys think part of the motivation on Lionsgate's part is to get a bunch of sort of templated stuff so they don't have to shoot again some scenes, that they can repurpose content for new films? Is this
or they generate it from text or storyboards?
So in either case, they're going to save on their production costs, I would think.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. That's part of it.
And
That's part of the
big
vision.
draw
Absolutely.
here, is that if you could pull from 20,000 films and television shows and say, I need a scene of Santa Monica Beach, boom, it either recreates it or pulls it directly, and that's a day of shooting you don't have to do. Is that?
Well, this is probably the future of CGI, right? Of computer generated effects and backgrounds and crowd scenes and all of that stuff, special effects. I think AI ultimately gets integrated into that or becomes the source of that.
This feels like a game over moment where Lionsgate said, you know what, things are changing so quickly in AI that two things. One is we're going to be disrupted by AI. So we have to be early adopters of this. The other thing is on the early adopter side of this is that if they start this 6 months or a year down the road, they're going to be that much further behind. So they probably are just saying, let's jump in now. Let's learn what we can. Let's get a competitive advantage as much as we can and create a ton of content for less, like what we're talking about. But I think they've decided rather than us being disrupted, let's be the disruptor, disrupt ourselves and create new outcomes. Some of those outcomes are really pretty incredible. What we're talking about here is building a library of all of this, all of these different scenes or those kinds of outputs. But the big output also is in the whole way that films are being constructed going forward.
Right. From the writing to the film production to post-production, everything will be touched by AI going forward. I mean, think of all the writers in Hollywood who are going to use these tools to generate, I've got an idea, then I want to generate a story from that and tweak the story, then generate a script from that, tweak the script, and then it's going to compress the time frame of writing and pre-production and probably production as well. I would think.
Well, if you look at some of the motivation behind why Lionsgate did this, besides trying to get in front of it, Andy, I think they're a bit struggling as an entity in and of itself. They lost 500,000 stars, which is one of their streaming channel subscribers. Their market cap is down in the $2 billion range. I mean, they're having to get in front of the AI, and they're expecting it to deliver better financials at the end of the day. And so they're certainly affected.
That's kind of the game over, aspect of this as well. The real winner in this, arguably, is RunwayML, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones who are getting access to all of this content, and now they can come up with models that are going to enable other studios, large and small, right? So you might have the future of a studio might be, 5 executives with a bunch of really good storytellers and an army of, prompt managers who are really good at using the tools to create hundreds, thousands of movies.
I mean, think about the reality of that for a city like Los Angeles that relies, motion picture business, TV business is a massive piece of the LA economy.
Most production doesn't happen in LA. Most production happens in Canada or Georgia or somewhere else. The executives are in LA and the actors live in LA and the agent infrastructure is in LA, but the production is not happening in LA.
They shoot a lot of shows in LA. They do. They still do.
And if you look at, Tyler Perry, we talked about him a few episodes ago, but he was about to build out a $200 million studio in Atlanta. And he scrapped that plan once he saw Sora and saw that that's really the future of where this goes. So, when you have moves like this and what he's doing, and I'm sure all the other studios are standing on the sidelines going, okay, we got to do something. There's a lot of movement that's happening in Hollywood, giant steps that are being made right now. And it's definitely changing the landscape.
Okay, so let's move on to another item since we could talk all day about that and nothing else.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well let's talk about what happened with Elon this week. Elon posted this deepfake video of Kamala Harris.
He retweeted it.
it. Okay, so go ahead, Greg. Tee it up for us.
California has signed a number of bills or enacted there's been a number of pieces of legislation designed to regulate AI. And there's a particular one, a bill, or it's now a law that is designed to prevent the distribution of misleading deepfakes. And it would make it illegal. And I don't know off the top of my head what the penalties are, sort of like libel law, where you republish something. Slander is the verbal and libel is the written. And if you republish something that is libelous, then you can be held responsible. You're sort of promulgating the libelous information. So this is the equivalent of that for deepfakes. California is prohibiting that. Elon Musk did that, as he often does with disinformation or misinformation now that he's aligned himself with a certain candidate. And this law makes that illegal. And the central question is, does that run afoul of the First Amendment in some way? You know, it'll be challenged in court, undoubtedly. But the challenge is, how do you prevent widespread abuse of these technologies without impacting the First Amendment or running afoul of the First Amendment?
One aspect of that law, Greg, is that if there's an obvious disclaimer on the AI deepfake stating that it has been digitally altered, then the bill doesn't apply.
That insulates them.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really designed to get people to disclose the AI piece of it.
That it is fake. That's the objective of the bill, I think. Is they can, they don't want to stop people from doing stuff, but they want people to say, I made this and it's fake, essentially.
So I was unaware of that piece of the law. So that probably insulates it, Andy, against the First Amendment challenge. It's just a disclosure requirement. And that'll be seen as reasonable probably by the courts, depending upon which judge you're talking to.
Right. So is that satire at that point, or it falls under some kind of other, category like that?
Well, as Newsom said, we're not getting rid of satire. What we're trying to get rid of is stuff that is been faked and is not acknowledged that it's been faked.
Right.
So it's disclosure.
Well, there's all kinds of third parties trying to influence the election in this particular case, and this was in that context because it was a Kamala Harris deepfake where she was saying I'm incompetent or saying some things that were designed to disparage her candidacy, and this is a very real danger in the United States. So it's people need to take some action, but need to do it in a way that is not inhibiting parody or satire, and this would seem to be okay in the sense that this disclosure is would insulate it against the First Amendment challenge. I would imagine.
And the good thing is that it's a law that came out of California. I think it's good that it started here because then it kind of becomes the standard for the other 49 states potentially.
That's another conversation about who does it apply to, but it does certainly represent a potential model for others to emulate in their particular states.
Well,
in the
if you
absence
have
of any
to
sort of
run the
federal
disclaimer
legislation.
in California, then you take it out for other states. That's an incremental cost. So, hopefully it says, if it's fake, just tell people it's fake. Let's just be straight, which I think is a good thing.
Well, but a lot of people are doing these with the intention that they're convincing and not in a parody or satirical manner. They're trying to impugn the particular individual who's the subject of the deep fake by making it seem realistic. And, that's the danger. And that's why these kinds of laws are necessary. And we're not going to have a federal law because the federal government is too slow moving and too bogged down in, kind of partisanship. And so the states are going to be the de facto regulators, just as they are with privacy. The states are becoming the de facto regulators of these technologies, which is not necessarily a good thing because you get a lot of different regulations that say a lot of different things, forcing companies to have to comply with a lot of different rules that sometimes may conflict with one another. But anyway, it's good that something is being done, and hopefully that'll force some kind of federal action.
Then how do you enforce anything like that also? If it's just only happening in California, okay, so you're in Arizona right next door, and they don't abide by this law. How do you regulate that?
Well, but if you produce it and you're trying to run it in multiple states, and California is a big enough market where you're going to want to run something, then you got to go back and, take out the disclaimer in Arizona, but leave it in for California.
That can be done technologically, but it gets into the sort of realm of what are called long-arm statutes, where one state has jurisdiction over something that may be based in another state. It's like, how far does the jurisdiction extend? And the EU basically says if an EU citizen is consuming your content, then EU regulations apply. If a California citizen is consuming the content or is exposed to the content, then California regulations apply, even if the company is based in Wisconsin or something. So like if you do something, the internet destroys borders. So if you're doing something directed at the particular population of the state where the law is enacted, then arguably it applies. But that's sort of a more arcane, judicial process, legal process discussion.
Right. And technically, I guess you're just blocking a bunch of IPs so that people in that state can't.
Well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what the porn sites do when the states pass laws that say you got to have some sort of definitive ID or credit card or something that confirms that the person trying to access that content is over 18. They will just block validation. So they just block IPs, which you can get around with a VPN, but most people don't use VPNs.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's change topics here. Talk a little bit about OpenAI. Last week, we were talking about this round of funding that they're doing and kicking around what their plans may be. This week, we found out that their round is oversubscribed. They're raising $1 billion to do that. That's a huge amount of money to raise and also to be oversubscribed that quickly.
It's the largest venture capital round of all time by $500 million. It exceeds Elon Musk's earlier XAI round. And it says, the reports say that they're turning down billions of dollars. They're turning down billions of dollars. They're raising $6.5 billion and they're turning down billions of dollars. It says a $150 billion pre-money valuation. I don't know what the post-money valuation will be, but it's, Thrive Capital is the leading investor at $1.25 billion. So that's one investor putting in over $1 billion.
It's $6.5 billion they're raising.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah. But I mean, they're burning cash like mad. But nonetheless, this is a lot of money. It shows two things. There's a lot of investor capital that's sort of sitting around waiting for attractive opportunities, or a lot of money circulating that hasn't found a good home, and just how the AI frenzy is at least around certain companies is still very much in full swing.
And also, I wonder what the horizon is on getting an exit on that, right? So even if you place that money today, let's say,
never,
right? When do you never exit? And what is their exit? If you look at Stripe or other companies like that haven't gone
20
public.
years.
Right now, there's over $6 trillion sitting around trying to be invested. So It's not hard for something like AI to get 6.5. That's what, 10% of it?
Pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's approximately.
There's $6 trillion looking for an investment. It's staggering.
I can't do the math in my head. Six billion is 10% of 6 trillion. Is that truly the case? I mean, I should be able to do that math.
Well, it's not. It's
more
not,
like what? It's not.
It's 1%.
Yeah,
1%.
It's 1%. I was going to say 10% for one company to take is pretty impressive.
No,
but
it's 600.
Nonetheless,
665 billion would be 10%. This is, or maybe it's 1/10 of 1%.
There's a lot of money, and this is a big amount of money, but it's only a tiny fraction of the money that's out there waiting to be invested, which explains the oversubscription of the round. Is that people want in on what they see as a relatively sure thing, although your point about the time horizon, I think, is a really valid one. I mean, these guys are eventually going to go public, probably.
Public markets are fickle and they're difficult to deal with. And so, that's why companies like Stripe haven't gone public, because they've created secondary markets to create liquidity, but they haven't gone public because they don't want to be under public scrutiny in the market.
Which is a wise position, I think, in many cases.
Let's change gears and we'll wrap up on this one. There's so many products that are coming out that are saying that they're AI, right? AI beds or AI toaster, AI coffee makers, all this stuff. It's because it's the big buzzword these days, right? So, you were talking about this AI bed earlier.
Oh,
What is an
this?
AI?
Yeah, I could call it a silly little article that, was trying to pitch their sex toys. And there was a legitimate article about beds that can understand your temperature, your position, how deeply you're sleeping, and adjust for that. That seems reasonable. It's a smart bed. And then there's been some that are out there, you see them on TV, they're advertised all the time. But I think the piece I read is taking that smart bed to the next place where it can interpret, your body mechanics and all that stuff and give you a better night's sleep. And if you ask a lot of Americans, a lot of people around the world, one of the things that challenges most people is getting a good night's sleep. So I think, if you can bake it in there and it actually delivers a better night's sleep, that's worth a lot of money, even though they're expensive. I mean, think about how much time we spend in a bed and how little we actually spend on that bed over that time. Beds are almost a commoditized thing today. So I think it's kind of smart, actually.
There are apps and there are other, platforms like Sleep Number, as an example,
right,
has an app tied to the bed. It can tell you what your heart rate is, the average heart rate, and how many breaths you're taking, how much good sleep you're getting, how you're tossing and turning, all those kinds of things.
But that's after the fact, right? That you get up in the morning, you see how you did. I think these beds are trying to, adjust something while you're sleeping so that you get more sleep, in real time.
Huh.
So it raises this question about AI as a product feature, as a consumer product feature, right? And a lot of consumer products can incorporate AI in one form or another. In our world of sort of internet marketing and B2B and SaaS, AI is a almost uniformly praised positive kind of thing. And there's some survey data, both from the Pew research organization and most recently from a trade journal. Oh, it's from Washington State University that was the source of the research, and it was published in the Journal of Hospitality, Marketing and Management. Both of these sort of surveys find something similar, that there's anxiety around AI. The Pew research shows that there's a certain amount of consumer anxiety around AI. The academic study talks about how mentioning AI in conjunction with a consumer product, TV, medical devices, financial services, and I don't know the full spectrum of products that they examined. If that's in the product description, it makes consumers less interested in buying the product. This is a single study. More studies are necessary, but it has some cautionary signs or signals for product makers who are eager to promote AI as a central feature of their product. And just one final thing, there was a Google commercial in which this was during the, this, right? During the Olympics, they ran an ad in which a father was helping his daughter write a letter to an athlete using AI.
Right.
And it sparked a huge backlash. And then Google pulled the ad and had to issue a statement. There's this question about when does AI and in what categories does AI enhance the thing, and when do you keep quiet about it and just talk about it in a different way? So you could say all the stuff that you were saying, Neil, about the product. The bed will adjust. It'll, has sensors or whatever you want to say, and it'll ensure that you get a better night's sleep. When do you want to say something like that versus when you talk about AI kind of explicitly? I think it's a really interesting question.
Definitely. I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but sometimes I'll be talking with people about AI and I'll talk about some of these things and they'll say, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That's not.
People are scared by it. They get nervous.
So, if you extrapolate that out and, you got humanoid robots coming on the scene that are, using the latest reasoning model and all this kind of stuff that's going to happen. It's just going to happen. What happens with that where you have all this fear and concern, and meanwhile, you have this machine learning escalation and speed of which that the intelligence level of AI is growing so quickly? That's a confluence of just diametrically opposed forces right there. What happens with all of this? It's really such a fascinating idea. From a marketing perspective, like you're saying, Greg, people are turned off by the idea. Somebody in the marketing department thought it'd be a good idea to promote AI coffee makers or toasters or whatever. But if they're not selling because people are afraid of that, or they might feel like it's a surveillance tool or something like that.
It becomes about the language that you use, right? If you have a coffee maker with artificial intelligence versus the same coffee maker described as a smart coffee maker,
Right.
The second category is going to be more, people are going to be more receptive to that than the use of the buzzword artificial intelligence in all likelihood.
Well, if my pet knows that I'm awake and it can message the coffee maker to get the coffee brewing, that's pretty good. Then you don't have to set the time on the coffee maker, which you do today, say at 6:30. You let the machines talk to each other, which is really all the Internet of Things stuff that was really big a couple of years ago. I mean, it's sort of the next phase of that, right? Let these things talk to each other.
Not B2B marketers, but people have kind of apprehensions, as you're alluding to, Andy. People are nervous about how AI will impact their jobs, how AI will impact society in general. There was a story that we're not talking about Larry Ellison, who's advocating just total surveillance all the time, everywhere, and that's going to keep order in the society. And that's sounds like a smart idea to him, but it's totally creepy and freaks people out. Or AI use screening employees and evaluating resumes and helping make hiring decisions, or helping make disability benefits decisions in different contexts, right? With government using AI is going to be absolutely everywhere. And the thing that's scary to people is that they will lose control, or they will be discriminated against, or something bad will happen. And part of that is because they simply don't understand things, and part of that is a justified fear if we don't have guardrails in these situations.
Absolutely.
Like the writers, to bring it back to the first story, the Lionsgate story, the writers and the actors are scared of being displaced by, deepfakes or, automation, like what's happening with Audible. Record my voice once and use it to narrate 10,000 books. And the cut that I'll get will be something, but it'll be much less than if I did a subsequent performance,
So fascinating. All right. Well, on that note, let's leave it at that for this episode. Thanks, guys. We will be back next week with more interesting things that's going on in AI.